Hello, this is your host with the most, the Forge Master Warhammer, back at you with another live stream. Unfortunately, this might not be a very kino stream, but sometimes we have to forego the kino, or I have to forego the kino to tell the truth and get the truth out. So I will be talking about the T-4 Euthanasia Program and the extermination by the National Socialists, or the Nazis, in Germany against innocent autistic victims. Now, there are many scant and rather inconsistent but still verifiable documentation by Hans Asperger's, and other Nazi lead doctors, which shows the absolute villainous and horrendous, horrible campaign of exterminating anyone that had autism or any kind of disability in the Nazi Third Reich. So Germany was a one-party totalitarian state. It was led by the Führer, the leader or the head of state. The offices of the Reichschancellor and the Führer were merged, and basically Hitler was the sole and direct supreme dictator of the Germans and the German people. Everything that he claimed to do, or everything that Hitler said or claimed to accomplish and do, was in the name of the German people. So, in 1938, thereabouts, a program to euthanize all of the disabled or people that had a disability basically were to be euthanized. That is, they were to be given asphyxiation of gas, and basically that gas would go through their nostrils into their lungs, and they would expediate and die. Death by asphyxiation and by poison, basically. Now, I have no idea if they use Zyklon B. I don't think they use Zyklon B, but... So the documentation and the materials are verifiable, but the stuff that I have read is rather inconsistent. But basically, from what I understand, 20,000 or 28,000 to about 130,000 or so disabled people were exterminated. Now, in regards to people with autism, I wasn't able to really find anything. I did find some documentation that said that Hans Asperger's, a doctor in Vienna, did allow the mercy killing of 2 autistic or Asperger's people. So we do know that 2 Asperger's people died in the Holocaust, for sure. Were gassed, or had like a syringe with whatever chemical put into them, and they died from that, or they were gassed. I don't know. Now, like, how many literal autistic people were put into gas chambers or whose bodies were burned? It's very hard to tell. But it probably did happen. It is a fact that this did happen. I wish that I could come up with some more, numbers and stuff about it, but the only thing that I could really find was a Wikipedia article that's in the French language that said that under the Nazi occupation of Vichy France, 45,000 autistic people were starved to death in hospitals by the Nazis and by the occupation authorities. That's it. There are articles online that say that autistic people were murdered in the T-4 Euthanasia Program and then in the Holocaust, but the numbers and stuff are very hard to find and draw out. And the reason why is that Nazi science did not have any concept of anything about Asperger's or about autism or anything like that. But doubtlessly there were autistic people in Nazi Germany. There weren't exactly that many, but they pretty much were all killed in the Holocaust. Like, they all died. Together with the Jews, the Gypsies, the Roma, and the homosexuals, and the communists. They were all killed. Okay, and again, I can't find nothing about the numbers, and I'm just, yeah. So yeah, Germany pretty much set itself up to destroy, to self-destruction. The Führer's mental illness and madness drove Germany into utter cataclysm. First, by doing war and death and destruction on other peoples in other countries, and then by having it come back into Germany and having the Allied armies basically kill and mass rape and basically destroy the entire country by 1945. And all of this is the legacy of Nazism. It is not, the ultimate evil, because I've also read studies and I have read reports and stuff about Adolf Hitler having Asperger's syndrome. I've read stuff about Albert Speer having Asperger's, and apparently, like, some Nazi officials and stuff might have had Asperger's. Goebbels is the most likeliest candidate for having Asperger's, but at the very same time, there's no doubt that people that had Asperger's were murdered and killed in the Holocaust as well. Didn't Sigmund Freud have Asperger's? I'm not for sure, but allegedly, I read somewhere that Sigmund Freud had Asperger's and he died in Paris sometime around the Nazis when they occupied France. Or he died in Vienna. He died in Vienna sometime after the Anschluss, and there's people that say that the Nazis poisoned him and killed him. But yeah, there is verified and confirmed proof and documentation that people with autism died, and were killed by the Nazis, but it is only very few. Like, clairvoyantly, there's only very few proofs of this. And in terms of actual numbers and actual figures and stuff, I can't really find anything. The only thing I could find was a French article that I had to use Google Translator to read that said that 40 to 50,000 French people with autism died during the Vichy France occupation. They were starved to death in mental hospitals and mental institutions. So yes, the majority of these people who were murdered were generally very low IQ. They had a 60, 70 IQ, 65 IQ digit range. They were basically mentally retarded, a lot of them. I don't know how many actual high-functioning autistics actually died during the T-4 Euthanasia Program or during the Holocaust, because like my screen, it's very black and very grim to really talk about. So yeah, anyways, yes, it was a very horrendous act And I don't pretend to, sit here and say that, it's irrelevant, because I'm not. I'm just saying that this is not the worst thing that has happened in history, okay? Compared to like the Cambodian genocide and to Pol Pot, who literally worked to death and imprisoned and shot a quarter of the Cambodian population, Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution, Stalin and the Gulag Archipelago system and the purges and stuff, and just a lot of these other types of mass atrocities. I mean, you kind of have to you just kind of sometimes have to put a break on it. The Germans were very bad. Back then, the Germans, or the Krauts, were very evil and sinister with what they did, and the thing is that Adolf Hitler did all of this in the name of the German people, and the German people accepted it. There was a referendum when Hitler was appointed by Hindenburg, and the vast majority of the German people accepted Hitler as the Führer of Germany, and the German people kept their heads down and they did not do nothing. Nazi Germany was also, in addition to being a totalitarian dictatorship, it was also extremely collectivist and enforced public education. There was no homeschooling in Nazi Germany. They pushed public schooling and absolute indoctrination from a young age. You had to join the Hitler Jugend and the German Girls' Youth League or whatever, like that had to be attended. There was enforced conscription. So this is a good example of why the nation-state system can be used for extremely bad and very erroneous purposes, and it's really a shame too, because this regime has dampened virtually any kind of an attempt to create a new ethno-state or a new white ethno-state, because of what happened here with the gas chambers and all of that. I don't know why that these academics don't ever pay attention to what Muslims have done. Like, I know that in some Muslim societies, they will actually purposefully cut off and mutilate female genitalia under Sharia law. Like, there's a lot of atrocities Muslims have committed. Muslims have transported millions of slaves from one part of the world to another. There is a lot of black slaves under Islam. The communists murdered and starved countless millions. But yeah, generally a very shameful period, but I don't think that the Third Reich is necessarily, just a perfect example or just a shining image on everything that Western civilization has done. Western civilization and the Christian Church were not responsible for what Germany chose to do in 1933. Okay, when the Weimar Republic was set up after Germany's defeat in World War I, nobody could have ever foreseen what would follow in 1933. So, in 1945, very shocking and horrendous thing with the discovery of the gas chambers, and no doubt at least some of those dead bodies were autistic victims or Asperger's victims in the Holocaust or whatever that American soldiers or Soviet Russian soldiers found when they discovered the extermination camps and freed the prisoners at the end of the Second World War or at the end of World War II, when the Allied occupation of Germany was just beginning to get underway. But yeah, May the 5th, 1945 is known as Liberation Day in Germany. I think that it is a public holiday in Germany. Right now, it's a public holiday. So, like, there is actually a public holiday in a country where they celebrate their own national defeat as a liberation from themselves, from their own murderous regime that they created, and from a leader that claimed that he was doing all of that in the name of the German people and for the glory and the greatness of the German nation, or the greater German Reich. So yeah, it's a very this is a very un-Kino, very anti-Kino, but at the same time a very strong truth seeker video or whatever. So if anybody is not going to say nothing, I'm going to probably end the stream. Are there any questions, any remarks, or nothing? I'll wait a little bit. But yeah, I'm done with my rant. So in 1918, the defeat of the German Kaiserreich, it was not completely good, but it was not completely bad either. It's a morally neutral issue. A lot of things in World War I are morally neutral. World War II is drastically different in the sense that there was something to actually fight for, even when at times it was not really clear about it. But, the business interests, they were pushing for America to get into a war with Japan. And, there was a lot of racial incentivized propaganda against the Japanese. There was internment of Japanese just because of their race and their nationality. They were put into internment camps. Not everything that America did was necessarily a good thing. Was it really necessary to bomb Dresden? Because that did not really stop the Holocaust. That really, the T-4 program, the T-4 Euthanasia Program had already happened. Like, all those autistic people were already dead and in a mass grave. Like, most of the Jews in Eastern Europe and most of the gypsies were in mass graves when Dresden was bombed, But I'll leave that to the viewer to personally decide about that. But yeah, sometimes human nature isn't always good. Sometimes the very nature of what a human is and what it is to be human is not always positive. And sometimes a massive technocratic industrialized society can do very evil things. And modernity, modernization, scientific advancement can be done, or that stuff can be used for militarism, for mass weapon production, and for mass genocide, just as much as it can be used to save millions of lives with new medicine or new types of food productivity. So there's always two sides to a story. Okay, and I'm just one man here. I'm just one guy, just talking into the ether here on a live stream. I'm just one person. I can't just cover all of this stuff, and expect everybody to agree. But I'm going to probably get a lot of negative banter from both sides for doing this IRL, but you know what? I don't give a fuck.